I know I've been lacking a little bit on my videos, but today I'm about to do a quick reaction to 15 most shocking prison sentences. I just feel like we're gonna get some crazy stuff today. But off rip, these people know the things that they are doing is wrong. So whatever they get charged with, I just feel like they deserve it. At the end of the day, they deserve it because certain things you just don't do. Alright, let's get into it.
Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. There's a lot of truth in that, especially for those people who forget that they could be spending life behind bars. From an attempted murderer with a fainting spell to a weeping monster, here are 15 craziest reactions of convicts after being given a life sentence. Before we begin, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell for more amazing videos every day. With that being said, let's begin. Number 15. The Hitman Hirer. In 2014, Diana Lovejoy was in the midst of a brutal and messy custody battle with her ex-husband, with neither side willing to budge on their demands. In a fit of rage and a crucial lack of thought, Diana conspired with her gun instructor to resolve the situation by murdering her ex-husband. Of course, the whole thing went horribly wrong. The shooting instructor didn't actually kill her ex-husband, but shot him in the armpit, and later claimed, "If I wanted to kill him, I would have." It's the murder equivalent of, "No, I didn't lose the basketball game, I just didn't feel like winning." But months later, Diana found herself in court, and as the judge read out the guilty verdict, the weight of her actions hit Diana all at once, and she passes out immediately. Lovejoy was soon wheeled out of the courthouse by paramedics, but it didn't change the sentence. She's now serving 25 to life in prison. So, she didn't kill her husband, lost the custody battle, and got sent to jail for the rest of her life. Sounds like it was worth it, eh? It'll come as no surprise when we tell you that the number one cause of life sentences is murder or attempted murder. Those who try to take lives usually find it costs them their own, as they're forced to live out their days in a big block of concrete with unpleasant people and some sludge for dinner. But for some like Diana, that realization comes a little too late. Number 14. A Monster Cries. Many of those given a life sentence will do anything to avoid jail time, even if that means appealing the ruling or just outright denying the juror's verdict. But sometimes you can only hurt yourself and your case for doing so. Ellis Nelson Ortiz Neves made news in 2017 when he beat a 4-year-old boy to death and was given a life sentence in return. It didn't take long for Ellis to appeal the charges, claiming that the trial testimony was based on junk science and was biased against him due to the jurors hearing about past episodes of domestic violence and violence towards children. Even the suggestion that these episodes were irrelevant is absurd, given the nature of the case. When the jury all but dismissed Ellis's appeal, the judge began describing the injuries suffered by the boy in graphic detail. Overwhelmed by what he was hearing, Ellis broke down into tears until he was eventually forcibly removed from the court. In what has to be one of the most brutal and honest comments ever heard in a courthouse, the judge called Ellis the lowest form of human life that I've been able to observe or see. Shortly after, Ellis was sent back to prison for the rest of his life, and rightly so. Justice had been served. Number 13. The Teen Killer. In 2012, a devastating murder shocked the relatively peaceful city of Sheboygan Falls, Wisconsin. In what was the city's first homicide since 1996, 2 young teenagers attacked and killed 78-year-old Barbara Olson at her home with a hammer and hatchet. In a tragic twist, one of the killers was her great-grandson. At only 14, Antonio Barbeau was sentenced to life in prison for first-degree intentional homicide. Barbeau initially tried to get himself off the hook by claiming mental disease or defect due to cognitive difficulties that began when he was struck by a car at the age of 10. But when it became clear that this excuse was not going to work on the court, Barbeau was forced to accept the severity of what he did. And he was so overcome with guilt and regret about his crime that he couldn't even finish his statement in court, forcing his lawyer to finish it for him. Barbeau's unforgivable killing of his own great-grandmother did not just end her life, but his too. At the age of 14, he all but guaranteed that he would spend his life in prison, only becoming eligible for parole in 2048. By that time, he will be 50 years old and will most likely be regretting this twisted decision. Number 12. The Fainting Sisters. In 2017, a 3-year-old Georgia boy was pronounced dead, with the cause ultimately determined to be blunt force trauma. But the boy's guardian claimed he had been sent to bed after taking a cupcake, where 2 sisters went to check on him and found him unresponsive. That's obviously a very different story. So what actually happened? Well, only in court did the truth come out. The boy had taken a cupcake from the kitchen when he wasn't supposed to, but the sisters didn't find him unresponsive. they decided to punish him themselves, with one spanking the boy and the other repeatedly hitting him with a baseball bat. All that for taking one cupcake. The boy later died from the repeated strikes, and the sisters were rightly indicted with a life sentence. This video shows the women reacting to their life sentence, with both collapsing to the floor. But was it shock, devastation, whatever it was, there's no question that these women deserved what they got. To beat a child to death with a baseball bat for something as trivial as taking a cupcake is such a cruel and evil crime that a life sentence is more than fair. Yet these sisters didn't expect to get such a severe punishment, which leads you to ask, what did they expect? Then again, it's clear that these convicts aren't exactly great at thinking in terms of long-term consequences. Number 11. The sleeping murderer. It's always a bold move to laugh or smirk during your big trial, but to fall asleep, you're really playing with fire if you try and pull off that one. Yet some convicts don't consider a court appearance to be the place for regret or reflection, but pride. And as this guy showed, that's a really dumb thing to do. After murdering an elderly woman, this teenager made a splash in his debut appearance in court, after he spent the entire hearing laughing, smirking and sleeping. At first glance, the convict looks to be under the influence of some kind of drug, but it quickly becomes apparent that he's actually just very proud of the twisted act that he committed. It's hard to believe that anybody could be so heartless to sit and smile as others hear of their cold-blooded killing, but that seems to be the norm for criminals like this. For this guy, the fact that he got a life sentence made no difference. He was happy about the crime and clearly didn't regret it, and for that reason he got sentenced to spend the rest of his life behind bars. To sleep in court is to show no regret, no remorse, and no respect. And when you're at risk of going to prison for the rest of your life, that's not necessarily the kind of thing you want to be showing. Of course, that doesn't matter for this guy. Number 10. The crying carjacker. The old saying goes that there's no such thing as a victimless crime. Every action we take affects someone else, and the crime spree affects a heck of a lot more, particularly if you choose to steal from innocent people like this carjacker. And once you've committed these crimes and hurt others, it makes it difficult to feel bad for you when you cry over your life sentence. In 2014, Ryan Stone embarked on a carjacking crime spree, stealing several vehicles and kickstarting a lengthy high-speed chase with the police that resulted in one nearly fatal injury for a Colorado state trooper. The chase lasted over an hour and a half and included several different stolen vehicles, one of which had an innocent baby in the back seat. When he finally made it to court, Stone gave an emotional reading of his statement, claiming that he regretted his actions, a statement that contradicted recorded phone calls he made to his family from prison. In those phone calls, Stone allegedly bragged about his chase and insulted the trooper that he hit with the car with giddy glee. It goes without saying that the jury didn't take pity on the guy. Stone was ultimately sentenced to 160 years in prison for his actions, with the judge openly dismissing his claim to regret the very actions he bragged about in the calls. The Arapahoe County District Attorney added that unless Stone has access to cryogenics, he will die in prison, and cryogenics, as far as we know, are not available in prison. Number 9. The Morning Murderer. Admittedly, this entry is less of a life sentence and more of an end-of-life sentence. A Florida man who...
What's up, guys? I have a very important announcement. For Q4 and for Black Friday specifically, I've decided to build 15
killed 2 people while robbing several Dunkin' Donut stores was given the death penalty in 2015 for his crimes. His response was not quite what you'd expect. For a guy who killed multiple people while robbing a coffee and donut shop, James Harrod's reaction to the news of his death sentence was unsurprisingly muted. There were no hysterics, there were no dramatics. He just nodded while clearly fading in and out, even as his devastated mother was led out of the courtroom after her emotional response to the news. For Harrod, this was a surprising change of tactic. Previous appearances before the court saw him barking like a dog and even daring the judge to give him the death penalty. But apparently, even when the judge called his bluff, Harrod still pledged to appeal the sentence. I guess that's a crazy reaction to a crazy reaction. Harrod never actually showed remorse for his actions. If anything, he boasted and goaded about the whole incident with little concern for how it would turn against him. This is an excellent example of how our actions have consequences. Not everything goes in your favor. Number 8. A murderer collapses. It's pretty wild that so many murderers or attempted murderers would admit that they committed the crime and then change their mind. However, it's a very common occurrence. Most of the time, of course, this change of mind is all but dismissed, and when that happens, you get some unusual reactions from the convicted. In 2016, Jaleel Smith Riley pleaded guilty to charges of aggravated murder and attempted murder, only to later change his mind and claim that he did not do the very crime he said he did. This flip-flop was rejected pretty quickly, landing him a life sentence without the possibility of parole. But that didn't sit well with him. After hearing the news, Smith Riley collapsed to the floor of the courthouse before being picked up by police. But then he said something that confused everyone. So what does he get? To clarify, nobody has any idea whom Smith Riley was talking about. But if he was referring to himself in the third person, well, that's a whole other thing we can't even begin to deal with. It takes much courage and or stupidity to admit you did something and then claim you didn't do it. And it doesn't help anyone to just conveniently collapse when things don't go your way. But I guess that just goes to show that criminals aren't the sharpest tools in the shed. Number 7. Flipping the bird. This is probably a very obvious thing to say, but no good can come from flipping the bird to legal professionals. Whether you did the crime or not, whether you like the jury or you don't, it's just not a great idea to annoy the very people you want to save your life. Of course, some people just don't care if they get saved or not. TJ Lane was sentenced to life without parole after he murdered 3 high school students and injured another 3 while on a shooting rampage in 2013. At his sentencing, Lane heard the testimony of the victims' families while wearing a white t-shirt that read "Killer," smiling his way through their devastating comments. When it came time for his own comments, Lane went against his lawyer's advice to give a very brief but deliberately upsetting statement that confirmed he felt no remorse about the massacre and actually enjoyed it. And then, in one final twist of the knife, he then gave the middle finger to the families of his victims. By the time Lane was at his trial, he didn't care if he got a life sentence or if he was just going to get the death penalty. He just wanted to stir up more upset for the families of those he killed. He did it, and it's a shocking sight to behold. Number 6. Throwing the podium. Anger is never a good idea in a courtroom, especially if you're going to claim you didn't murder someone. But for one Missouri man, his rage got so intense that he very almost hurt the judge. And that could have been even more fatal for him than a mere life sentence. In 2012, mother of 5 Latrice Mays was killed by Jaleel Hoskins, who dumped her body into the dumpster where it was later discovered. Hoskins had long claimed that the murder was unintentional, that he loved Latrice, and that he would never have wanted to hurt her. Yet his response to the news of his life sentence offers a very visible counterpoint to his claims. After being handed his life sentence, Hoskins erupted into an expression of pure fury, grabbing the podium and flinging it toward the judge's bench. As he approached the judge, Hoskins had to be dragged out of the courtroom, probably for the best given that he looked as if he was about to cause some serious harm to the judge. Hoskins admitted to his crime, but he didn't believe that it was worthy of such an extreme sentence. He hadn't considered how serious murder was in the eyes of basically everybody but murderers. While Hoskins left the courtroom, his family began screaming at Latrice's family, a fitting end to a story of a completely avoidable murder. Number 5. Threatening the judge. The ultimate cardinal sin of any legal battle is to threaten the judge presiding over the case. It's a surefire way to tick people off and guarantee that you will be mistreated. And yet I think you can guess where this entry is going to go. In 2010, Juan Rodriguez appeared in court on charges of attempted murder, a crime that he adamantly denied committing. But when the judge denied Rodriguez's request to be let out of jail for Rosh Hashanah, he didn't exactly help himself. Angry about what he claimed to be religious persecution, Rodriguez told the judge that if he weren't allowed out of jail, he would take the judge's life. Those are quite literally his words, with no exaggeration or summary. "I will take your life." And then, as if to make matters worse, he followed up with, "What's your phone number? If you don't let me out of here, I'm going to kill you." One of the strangest not guilty pleas you'll ever see right there in front of you. The judge was obviously not impressed with the outburst and ruled that his decision go ahead, meaning that Rodriguez would not be allowed out for Rosh Hashanah and possibly putting the judge's life at risk in the process. Although let's be honest, it's highly unlikely this guy will ever leave prison anyway. Number 4. Teen freaks out. The fact that so many teenagers find themselves facing life sentences is a sad truth of our modern age. It seems that every week there's another teenager being forced to confront the consequences of their actions on the ultimate life-changing level. In 2012, 18-year-old Fernando Salgado appeared in court on charges of felony assault with a deadly weapon and attempted sexual assault with a foreign object. During a high school class, Salgado allegedly tried to force a piece of rebar into the anus of one of his fellow students, one of 2 incidences that brought him to court. After hearing of the court's conclusions, having apparently never considered that what he did was unacceptable or wrong, rather than take said life sentence, Salgado went against the advice of his lawyer and accepted a plea deal that would allow him to get a less serious sentence, on the condition that he testify against his teacher in another case. Had his case gone forward, Salgado would have been forced to register as a sex offender. If he hadn't have been sentenced to life in prison, life itself would have become his prison. Fortunately for him, Salgado managed to change his fate at the last minute, avoiding both of these outcomes, although now he faces the challenge of staying on the right side of the law. Number 3. Innocent or monster. While most legal cases feel pretty open and shut, some are a lot more complex and require some extra thought to come to the right conclusion, especially when those cases involve young people or teenagers that might not be fully aware of their actions. In March 2015, a trailer caught fire in York County, South Carolina, killing a 14-month-old boy inside. Months later, 17-year-old Jacob Matt Morgan was in court to address claims that he was the direct cause of his baby brother's death, something he adamantly denied, as prosecutors claimed that Morgan stood and watched the fire that killed his brother. Morgan cried and claimed to have done everything he could to save the brother that he loved. Unfortunately, Morgan's fascination with fire was well known within the family, and they provided evidence, and he eventually admitted to setting the fire that ultimately killed his brother. The case was notable due to jury divisions over whether or not Morgan was genuinely remorseful and innocent, or if he was faking his devastation. The fact that the fire was started in 3 places lends credence to the idea that this was intentional, but his family adamantly believes that Morgan is innocent and would never do such a thing. What do you think? Is he innocent, or is he the monster everyone claims? Number 2. A rampage. Well, rampage might be an exaggeration, but not by a whole lot. It's fair to say that when he was sentenced to be executed for the murder of a young couple, Dexter Darnell Johnson did not react well. In 2007, Johnson and 4 friends threatened an innocent couple with a pistol and a shotgun before carjacking, robbing, raping, and murdering them. In court, Johnson insisted that he was innocent and that the illegal activities were all at the hands of someone else, despite prosecutors presenting evidence that suggested it was part of a month-long crime spree that he took an active role in. When the news came that Johnson would be executed, his mother could be heard screaming and crying at the back of the court. After a few moments of quiet consideration, Johnson launched himself at the judge, only to be stopped by the waiting security guards. Johnson was led out of the courtroom, angrily ranting and fighting against the hold of the guards. Whether he wanted to accept it or not, his crimes were more than enough for the judge to warrant a full execution. He just couldn't handle that fact. Number 1. The Flinger. If there's one reaction you didn't expect when you clicked on this video, it's this one. Some people aren't content to sling words at the judge, believing that the situation calls for something a little more dramatic, or, for lack of a better word, potent. 46-year-old Ricky Hand was in court on multiple charges of armed robbery, but was less than happy about the sentence he got. After the judge informed him that he would be spending at least 40 years of his life in prison, Hand voiced his opposition to the decision before reaching for something under his arm and retrieving some pill bottles from his sling. Of course, he wasn't going to take any medication. Instead, he had filled these bottles with, well, himself. Hand attempted to throw samples of his urine and feces at the judge, though he was quickly stopped by security officials who no doubt stunk after the encounter. This is a pretty insane response to a sentence, and one that was probably as memorable to those in the courtroom as those outside of it, if only for what I can only imagine was the almighty smell of poop mixed with the sweat of the guy's sling. No thank you. Which of these reactions do you think was the most insane? Let us know in the comments. Also, check out our other cool stuff showing up on screen right now. See you next time.
Alright guys, that's the end of that video. Go like, comment, subscribe. I will be putting the link for that video in the description down below. Go run the views up. Also go subscribe to Americano channel. Go show love, you know. I will have more videos for you guys soon. Comment down below what videos you guys want to see. Also, you could message me on Instagram or my Twitter and let me know what else or what kind of content you guys want. Just keep me posted. But yeah, like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.